All right, my name is Charles Thompson. I'm Senior Director of Product Management with VIAVI Solutions. My colleague here today with me, Ward Cobley, and I are going to be walking you through VIAVI as an organization and then deep diving into some of the technology. You know, I've done a lot of these kinds of presentations in the past. I've never found one that was the perfect balance of like upfront technology overview and then deep dive. So I'll kind of be looking to the audience here, and as we get into areas that are interesting, the questions, and that'll drive the direction that we go in. We've got 10-ish slides. We're going to try and go through them quick, level set everybody, and then we're going to just dive right into technology. So let's go ahead and get started. We had a little conversation before the session began. I asked the question, how many people have heard of VIAVI prior to today? A couple folks had. For those of you that haven't, VIAVI is a fairly good-sized organization, founded in 2015 as a spinoff of JDSU technology. So if you've heard of JDSU, right, those are the assets and the resources. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this slide. A lot of people, a lot of presence, a lot of revenue. The most interesting part to me of this slide is the lower left corner, right, where our customers are both service providers and enterprise customers. And the cool thing that does for us is it gives us exposure to some of the biggest, most complex networks that have ever been built in the history with service providers. And it also exposes us to some really, really cool evolving technology and kind of next-gen bleeding edge stuff that's happening inside of the enterprises. So it's a pretty unique perspective for VIAVI as an organization to be able to have. As far as what VIAVI as an organization focuses on, it's really, I boil it down to the simplest terms, which is user experience. Now, how do you get to user experience, right? You participate in all 8 domains of the network lifecycle, right? From network lifecycle, from planning all the way through activation, and then full circle through optimization, right? And VIAVI as an organization does that literally from the absolute edge of the network down to the individual mobile device, for example, through the access and mobile providers with the radio access network, all the way through backhauls and into evolved IP packet cores. 3G, 4G, upcoming 5G for mobile carriers and providers, wireless access, LAN access, and then obviously inside of the enterprise environments, which is what we're going to be focusing on here today. It's literally end to end, right, of where the users consume technology and where that technology is housed and produced. So as I said, we're going to focus a little bit on the enterprise aspects of the VIAVI portfolio today. Again, you kind of see that happening from the very edge where users communicate and access technology all the way through to where it's housed. The top half of this graph kind of represents the historical way that looked, right, with big remote offices, campuses, right, folks in cubes all day, every day. And then the bottom half kind of represents the next gen, right, where it's a guy in a coffee shop, a gal in the airport, right, a very diverse kind of borderless enterprise infrastructure and environment where users actually consume the technology today. And then on the very far right-hand side where that technology is housed and produced, it ranges, right, from traditional hardcore data centers all the way through SaaS-based applications and literally everything in between. And that bifurcation is pretty interesting. We're going to be talking about that a lot today and sort of how it plays into some of the technology that our customers leverage. As far as what we're going to focus on today within the enterprise organization, it really comes down to 4 key aspects of the enterprise IT lifecycle, which is deploy, manage, solve, and optimize, right? So deploying new applications and technologies, managing the day-to-day operations of the business from an IT perspective, solving problems when they inevitably occur, and then optimizing the performance of service delivery as you try and kind of come full circle on the application process. Any questions so far? Relatively straightforward stuff. Okay. Talk really, really briefly about IT evolution because this kind of plays a key role, right, as we start to talk about the market space of NPMD. Anybody here familiar with the acronym NPMD? Network Performance Management and Diagnostics. Right? That's kind of the network segment that we're going to be focusing on here today as we talk about the applicability of our technology within VIAVI. But I want to start by talking a little bit about sort of the broader landscape before we drill down into the nuanced elements of NPMD. So from an IT evolution perspective, I think this all will probably resonate with most of the folks in the room here. Sort of traditional IT, right, which is consistent and static, and it's controlled and it's private, and it's typically purchased with capital expenditure dollars, right? So it's kind of big and it's heavy. It kind of lives in long life cycles of 4 to 6 years before it goes through iterations and refreshes, right? And that's kind of where the IT organizations that we've worked with for many, many years have always operated. Cloud IT, as I call it here, is dynamic and flexible, right? And it's scalable on demand, and it's usually acquired with operating expense dollars. So it's a different acquisition strategy for an organization. We'll talk about that as we get into this a little bit later. But essentially, what it amounts to is, you've got kind of the traditional environments, and you've got the very evolved environments. And if you bifurcate all of IT in that way, it kind of makes sense, right? You've got, whether it's a switch vendor, security offerings, NPMD, right? It's all sort of easily bifurcated into these two segments. The problem is that that's not where customers want to be in the relatively near future, right? Customers want to evolve to a hybrid approach, right? Where you have kind of the best of both worlds. You've got consistency and agility, you've got scalability and security, and you've got the ability to leverage CapEx dollars for your long-term projects that are going to be living for long periods of time within the organization. And you've got the ability to leverage OpEx dollars to be able to spin things up quickly and spin them back down, adjust on demand, adjust on the fly, right? So the reason that I'm setting all this context in the beginning here is because this is really, really applicable as we start to talk about the NPMD market specifically and this challenge, right? Because every customer that I've spoken with over the last, call it 18 months, maybe 2 years, has talked about this migration. Going from, we've got our data center, and we've got some SaaS. Sometimes it's run by shadow IT, sometimes it's fully certified, but we've got these kind of two distinct areas of IT, and we're trying to find a way to effectively bring them together, right? That's happening inside of every aspect, like we talked about, switching, routing, security, NPMD, right? And in all honesty, most industries, and I'll stand up here as an 18-year veteran of NPMD and just honestly profess, most industries are not doing a great job with this. NPMD has historically not done a very good job with this. And I'm going to show you that in just a second as we get into the market landscape and try and level set everybody on what NPMD is really all about. Let's jump forward and talk just a little bit about NPMD. Again, Network Performance Management and Diagnostics, right? Great acronym. We love acronyms. What it boils down to is user experience, right? Whether you want to be able to do that by building a better network, building a faster network, ensuring errors don't occur on the network, ensuring reliability of the infrastructure, understanding what users access, when they access, how they access, what it all ends up boiling down to at the end is end user experience. And in NPMD, end user experience is viewed through a multitude of technologies, right? So you've got things like SNMP and WMI, right, which is kind of some of that infrastructure visibility that we're all pretty familiar with through all the years of OpenView and Tivoli and everything else. Then you've got the machine data, right? Splunk is fantastic in the machine data worlds. Then you've got flow, NetFlow, SFlow, JFlow, IPFix, right? All these different infrastructure-generated records of what's transpiring. And then you've got hardcore packets, right? Down into the nitty-gritty, right? Everything that's actually transpiring on the wire with full fidelity, full visibility, right? And you can see sort of that each one of these technologies has their strengths and their weaknesses, right? Packets are incredibly strong in root cause analysis and isolation, what I sometimes think about as triage. But SNMP and WMI and machine data are really strong in kind of the front-end aspects of investigation and just straight-up monitoring, kind of red light, green light types of information, broad swaths of visibility from the environment. So that's kind of what the NPMD market looks like, kind of from a technology and sort of primary use case examples. Any questions about that? Straightforward enough? Okay. I want to make it clear, I'm not here to vendor compare. That is not my goal today. But what I do want to do is I want to give you guys a picture of sort of what the market looks like. So if we lay over vendors on top of this type of a view, what you see here is the traditional IT market for NPMD. And there are a lot of vendors. There's a lot of great vendors that are doing really, really cool things inside of the traditional NPMD space, right? This is on-prem, self-managed, CapEx dollars, right? This appeals directly to the folks that have major data center infrastructures, still have quite a few campuses. They run a borderless world, right? So their sales teams or some of their marketing organizations are still very remote, very dynamic, moving around on an ongoing basis. But for the most part, their data is typically consolidated into kind of key areas or key points. And so that's what the market landscape looks like for that traditional IT environment. Now compare that with what the market landscape looks like for cloud IT environments, right? The thing you'll note here is that, yes, there's less vendors in the hybrid IT or traditional there's more vendors in the traditional IT than there is in cloud IT. The big thing that you note here is that there's none of the same vendors, right? So this industry has literally bifurcated itself. And we've got traditional IT with traditional vendors doing what customers have asked for many, many years. And we've got cloud vendors that are in the cloud, for the cloud, right? Built for SaaS-based offerings, built for storage in the cloud, built for the AWS and Azure environments. And never the two shall meet is kind of the challenge that organizations are running into. So if you've got a situation where you need to monitor a SaaS-based offering, you're probably going to pick one of these vendors. If you've got an environment where you've got a big NOC or data center environment, you've got to be able to monitor all that infrastructure, you're probably going to pick one of the traditional vendors. And the challenges that's producing for our customers is kind of this challenge of, well, but I want to meld this stuff together seamlessly. That's where my network is going. That's where my infrastructure is going. That's where my users are going. But I need all my dependencies, my security and my switching and my NPMD to keep up with that migration. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, is we're going to talk about sort of what this migration looks like and how VIAVI intends to address this as we go forward. But first, I want to kind of give you a breakdown of what we, within the enterprise business unit here at VIAVI, really do with our customers day in, day out. And so I want to walk you through, I promise this won't take very long, a real-life workflow of end-user experience issues, right? So everybody here is a consumer of IT. This is not going to be in any way surprising. I think it's going to resonate quite well with folks. But I want to kind of walk you through, this is a real scenario that happened, very large financial institution in the southern part of the United States, and we literally sat down with them and watched as they triaged and troubleshooted a problem that occurred and watched the steps. And I mean, it's funny, but it's real, right? So it starts off with a user complaining, right? Somebody's having issues with the ERP, right? I'm trying to load this page, it won't load, it's really slow, it's not working well, right? The kind of the traditional thing. After somewhere between 20 minutes and 20 hours, depending on the user's tolerance for ineffective IT services, they finally give in, call help desk, open a trouble ticket. That gets assigned to a tier 1 help desk person. They go in, they identify no desktop, no configuration, no obvious connectivity issues. They note it and they ticket and they send it on down the line, right? So now at this point, you're maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours in, depending on how good the help desk infrastructure is. The user's been experiencing the problem for somewhere between 20 minutes and 20 hours, again, based on their tolerance. So it could even be a couple days old in some instances. And you've got a fair number of people now starting to get involved, right? Somebody took the call, somebody entered the ticket, somebody investigated it, they sent it on down the line. Tier 2 network engineering is now involved to understand whether or not there is potentially any routing issues or permissions issues on the infrastructure. And at the same time, the ERP admin gets involved, right? So now you've got maybe half a dozen people that are either exposed to this or aware of what's happening. Nothing obvious is found. It's noted in the trouble ticket by the tier 2 engineer, and it's sent on down the line. About that time, the network manager starts getting involved because they start hearing about this, right? And they start hearing that the network is having problems, right? The network is to blame. It's the age-old thing, right? And simultaneously now you've got sort of the networking team and the ERP team trying to troubleshoot this problem. Totally disparate perspectives. They're using different tools. They have different ideas of what the problem really is. The network guy's saying, listen, the network gets blamed all the time. It's not the network, right? And of course, the ERP guy's going, my app is fine. It's something to do with the transport, obviously, right? There's no way this is a problem with my major, multi-million-dollar ERP environment, right? And so this continues on, and more people get pulled in, and people start to get frustrated. And in the meantime, nothing's showing up in the error logs, and nothing obvious is the source of the problem, right? All roads leading back to the network team. It's got to be a network problem, right? And it's about this time that things start to spiral out of control, right? The networking manager's not happy. He's getting all the blame. He contacts his boss, right? They start to organize, some major meetings. At the same time, he's sending off packet experts, right? Guys and gals that live and breathe inside a Wireshark every day, all day, and they're going, we're just going to double check to make sure this isn't a problem because I'm not going to stick my neck out there and swear that the network's not at fault, when in actuality, maybe I did have something strange going on, right? And this is the one that always gets me, right? It's the war room. And I'm looking around, I'm seeing people smiling and nodding, right? Because this is it. This is where it all sort of lands. And you get together a dozen people that have been looking at this from different perspectives. They're all armed with their reports proving that it's not them. and they all sit down in a room and argue about, well, it's clearly the application. No, it's clearly the network. Well, I think security's probably blocking it. And everybody's got their individual tool reports saying, no, 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 my tool says it's fine. Well, your tool's always wrong. Remember that time that, right? And this goes on and on and on. And eventually, it gets escalated to the CIO. Problem's still not fixed, right? You've spent the cumulative total of probably 100 man-hours on it. The user's still suffering the problem, and now the CIO is just, frankly, upset that this is even happening in the first place, right? So that is the standard user troubleshooting situation that our customers run into day in, day out, right? I've had these conversations on the floor here at Cisco Live, and you know, this scenario resonates, and it's real, and it happens every single day. Different players, right? Different steps along the way, but this resonates. This is what's happening. And so, you know, we think about this and we say, well, what's a better way, right? What's a better way to be able to do this? And in actuality, you know, a better way is probably a similar use case, right, where the trouble ticket's created, Tier 1 gets involved, they note it in the ticket, it goes to Tier 2. But in this particular case, Tier 2 has got application-aware network monitoring technologies, right? And so at this point, they've got the ability to actually see what types of transactions are occurring and which ones are actually causing the problem. Particular SQL queries that are happening that are actually the source of the problem. So they pass that on, and that's the end of it, right? It's not the network, but it is a particular application dependency within a given type of transaction for a given set of users, right? So with all this context wrapped around it, you now have sort of a single source of truth, right? And that's where organizations are trying to get to today. And then you've sort of got, you know, the perfect world, right, where somebody's just sitting around minding their own business, right, doing their normal day job, and they get a ticket saying there's a particular problem occurring. They log in and take a look at a technology like Observer, the VIAVI portfolio, and it shows them exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and they're able to go in and deal with the stalled process that's causing the database read failure, right? So going from an incredibly chaotic process with a lot of different folks involved, a lot of different effort being spent that yields little to no results in a lot of situations, down to sort of a scenario where everybody's doing their day job and they're only having to deal with the problems of the network to triage and troubleshoot when issues actually arise. That's where folks are trying to get to, right? We're trying to help them get there. Some folks are actually there today. Most folks are kind of in somewhere between stage 1 and stage 2. That's the reality of where our customers are at today. Does that kind of resonate with the group? I mean, everybody's kind of lived this process before and been in those war rooms, and yeah, I mean, it's chaotic, right? And the finger gets pointed at the network team a lot of the time, and you know,
clearly it's always the application.
It's always the application's fault. I mean, reality, that really is. That's why we're here. That's what we're here to prove.
It's the user's fault.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So we're about 20 minutes in. I went a little bit long on my slides. I apologize for that. I'm going to just level set you on the portfolio, and then we're going to jump into demos, right, and actually walk through the technology. So let's talk a little bit about the NPMD portfolio from VIAVI, right? It's sort of bifurcated, right, as I talked about before, right? Sort of traditional along the top and cloud along the bottom, right? So we've got Apex and Gigastore along the top, right? Gigastore is kind of where it all starts, right? This is DPI, metadata generation, as well as deep packet forensics. Forensics for what? Performance issues, security issues. That's the primary use cases for Gigastore from a packet forensics perspective. So at the same time that it's putting 40 gig of data to disk, 1.2 petabyte storage arrays, it's also generating refined metadata, right? Calculations and views on what's happening within the packets, and generating those up to an operational monitoring and analytics dashboard that's on-prem and self-managed called Apex. So that's the demo that I'm going to walk you through today. Ward is then going to walk us through Observer Live. Now, Observer Live is that in the cloud, for the cloud, right? Managed service, SaaS-delivered monitoring and analytics platform that leverages both on-prem resources, or what we call agents, to be able to gain visibility from anywhere, as well as cloud agents deployed throughout the world in AWS and Azure and other clouds that Ward will talk you through, to be able to give visibility from anywhere or to anywhere, right? So those are kind of the two distinct portfolios that we're going to talk about. If there's no questions about this, I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah.
All right.
I have one question.
Please.
You mentioned that this is,
get metadata, we see all the stuff for the application. What applications are we talking? Can I plug this into any application I want? Can I monitor network services, DHCP radius? You know, we had said that wireless isn't a big player in this space, but if I can see radius performance and DHCP performance and all of the application stuff, I can say it is definitely not wireless. It is the radius server not responding quickly.
Yep.
You know, is this something that can be plugged into all of those other applications?
Absolutely, it can. Yeah. So it's a great question. I apologize for not addressing it earlier. The portfolio is focused on services and the delivery of those services and the user experience with those services. So the primary application, whether it's Skype or Outlook or SAP or whatever it is, that application is monitored. And all of the dependencies that that application has, whether it's DNS, DHCP, authentication, middleware like WebSphere, backend databases, all of that's measured as well. So there's hundreds and hundreds of different applications under the covers that are being analyzed, all within the context of sort of service delivery and the services that are being delivered. And I'll actually show you some visualizations on how we show both the primary application as well as the dependencies, so you can get a view of, well, yes, we are effectively having an ERP problem, but it has to do with authentication or DNS resolution that's actually the true root cause of the issue. So as you start getting into domain isolation and triaging the real source of the problem, those dependencies that you talk about are big keys to what we do. So I'll actually walk you through that, but that's a great question.
Question on the agents.
Yeah.
Can you kind of go over the requirements on the agents, like where the agents can be installed? Obviously, really anything with an operating system seems like fair game, you know, Windows, any type of Linux variant. But like I'm thinking like network gear, can your agent sit on top of like a Nexus switch or?
Yeah, so the agents, the on-premise agents that would go within a customer's environments are delivered in a couple different form factors, right? The first is, you know, straight up software agent that can be pushed out to a user's laptop or desktop for troubleshooting and ad hoc monitoring from that perspective. The second is a virtual appliance, right? An OVA, OVF, right? So that can ride on top of maybe a universal customer premise edge equipment, or it can sit inside of any of standard hypervisors, right? Gotcha. Whether it's VMware, Citrix, whatever it might be. And then we've actually got sort of the little micro appliances, right? Ward's got one here. Awesome, thank you, Ward. So this literally can be taped up under a desk. It can sit inside of a wiring closet, right? It's got normal, you know, RJ45 connections on the bottom of it. And so that just sits inside of wherever you want to, you know, hide it, tuck it away, whatever. And it acts as effectively a real user experience monitoring device. It transacts to voice, video, web, right, network connectivity, just like a real user would. And that's how that would work. So we've got a number of different deployment technologies, and actually, Ward will probably talk about that just a little bit as we get into this.
So what kind of, I was gonna say, so what kind of overhead do you have with this? If you're having one of these every desk, you know, I mean, are you seeing any kind of performance hit on the user's network to having one per desk, basically?
It's not usually one per desk. It's usually one per site or one per subnet, right? So VIAVI's a fairly large organization. We've got 30 offices, you know, around the country, and we'll put one of those micro appliances in each office to represent user experience from that perspective, right? So we can see our Germantown location, we can see our San Jose location, we can see our Austin, Texas location. So we've got a number of different perspectives. And as far as the overhead that it puts on the network, it's really transacting just like a user would. Makes a call once a minute or once every 5 minutes based on the user's preferences. It hits a couple websites, as Ward will show you later, every couple of minutes. So it's not a whole lot of network overhead because it's not doing load testing. It's trying to emulate what a user would do. That's the beauty of it. It really is real user emulation.
Is it PoE powered?
This one is not PoE powered. The next generation will be, but okay. This one is just straight DC into AC from AC. Yep. I want to talk to you guys about the future of the NPMD market and where we're going, right? So from the VIAVI perspective, we talked about traditional and cloud. We talked about hybrid IT and how they're melding together, and we showed you this portfolio. This portfolio serves as the foundational elements of our next generation NPMD portfolio, where we've got Observer. Right? Visibility and perspectives are provided both by physical appliances and virtual devices, cloud-based agents and on-prem agents, and down to the individual endpoints, right? Whether it's synthetic test, active monitoring, DPI-based, flow, you name it, right? all that content flows into a giant data lake, which is the question that was asked earlier. How do you correlate this and bring it together? You put together a giant data lake that looks at the data pivoted off of users and locations, and you consolidate it all from those two primary dimensions. And at that point, when a user goes into the monitoring and analytics platform that's delivered either on-prem self-managed or as a managed service in a SaaS-based environment, all hyperscale, all microservice architecture based, then they simply see all of the information, all of the insights we have. An active test serves to feed visibility for DPI. DPI serves to feed visibility and provide context for the flow-based data and so on. So that's the vision that we have to be able to create a hybrid NPMD portfolio, what we believe is going to be the first hybrid NPMD portfolio in the market to service the needs of hybrid IT-based customer environments.